Welcome, everyone. This webinar today is a quick one. It's a half an hour, sort of intense focus on the 5 research-based strategies that improve teacher retention. I have my good friend, Hlabangana-Clay, with me. She is wonderful. We met at the AAEE conference in Chicago, where I got to go on the Architecture River cruise, and she didn't get to, but she did here last month, or last week. So that's pretty exciting. And do you want to tell a little bit more about your background and what you do with the Delaware Department of Education, please?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, first of all, Cindy, for having me speak with you all today. And welcome to the folks that are joining us on the call. And congratulations for those who have won their prizes last week and at last time and this time as well. So I work at the Delaware Department of Education. My title is an education associate who oversees educator equity as well as recruitment. That position was created in 2022. It was redesigned where originally it was the educator preparation program and recruitment sat in the same office, and with the intentionality around wanting to build additional pipelines in Delaware for teachers or aspiring teachers, my position was created. And so I oversee all things related to recruitment. There are 42 LEAs here in Delaware, where we are really excited to be able to support their work as they think about retention as well as recruitment in their recruitment plans. But also I oversee our first teacher apprenticeship, which was established in the summer of 2023. It's a K-12 model, 2+2, where we're able to serve our paraprofessionals, maybe they're stay-at-home parents, right, of a kindergartner that just started out, et cetera, but someone who's a grow your own candidate where they have the opportunity and are able to go to finish their coursework, getting their degree at no cost, which is fantastic. We also are leveraging House Bill 430, which went through in 2022, where we can also create that same program for our high needs districts and charters here in Delaware. Again, if they have 60 credits of education under their belt, we take care of the other 60 credits for them, as well as that clinical experience. So 2 models, one Delaware Department of Labor collaboration for funding, and the other is legislative. So anyway, just a lot. There are many more things, marketing, et cetera, trying to be able to change the narrative of what it is to be a teacher, particularly in Delaware, but everywhere across the country, et cetera. So that's a nutshell. I know, Cindy, I could say more, but
It's a lot. 42 sort of different initiatives to supervise. Seems like you have your hands full, but that's wonderful that they're doing some different and innovative things to work on recruitment. So we've been talking a lot about this next sort of issue I'm going to bring up, and we've been really trying to, I personally have been working on trying to reframe this notion of teacher shortage and teacher retention. So how do you feel about some of what we hear around a teacher shortage? And we hear that a lot. So what are your thoughts about that?
Right. Well, thank you for asking that question, because it is a misconception or a misnomer, actually. So there actually is not a shortage. There are lots of people that could be in classrooms, quality teachers who are in classrooms. And so really what we're looking at is many, many factors. You have those who have retired, who are wanting to come back and serve, but because of state restrictions, and this is national, right? But because of state restrictions, et cetera, that allows them not to be able to do that full time or at all. You also have those that we pushed out of the education world, whether it was because of leadership or because of poor working conditions or, any number of things in addition to COVID. We've pushed people out of that profession, and they much rather, or they feel more of sense of belonging in another career path, unfortunately. But you also have lots of paraprofessionals, you have others who are this close to completing a degree and or have that degree. Some are qualified, but they haven't been given the opportunity to grow, to feel like they could be that teacher of record, and or they have been given the opportunity, but the climate in the building, in the district, in the charter, et cetera, is maybe not conducive for them to feel like they want to be a teacher of record. So those are just a couple of things. Cindy, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts around that?
Well, I didn't really understand how complicated this issue was until I did some research in my own state of Nebraska. And I did a public information request from the Nebraska Department of Ed because I was recertifying for my teaching certificate to have it remain valid, as we have to do in our state. And I'm not currently in the classroom, so I have to go through actually recertifying through taking graduate credit hours because I can't qualify through professional development recertification. And I got to be curious about how many teachers, first of all, were teaching in the state, and then how many were certified, 100% certified, but not teaching. And when I got that information, I was shocked. So in Nebraska, we have 25,000 teachers who teach across the state. Well, I was expecting maybe like 10,000 that were certified like me, but not in a classroom. And I found out it was 30,000. So 30,000 fully qualified teachers that aren't teaching. And while I understand we have shortage areas, that we've traditionally always had around special education, maybe music or something like that, and those might be state specific. What concerned me more is we can't have 30,000 teachers in Nebraska who decided to retire. Like, that's not realistic. We can't blame it on retirement. We've got something else going on, and I think we need to really hone in on this retention problem. And so we talked about, I know there's numerous factors as to what impacts retention, but today we're going to focus on really the top 5 that I hear from teachers, one of which surrounds leadership. So what do you think when we're talking about sort of strategies? And we know that one of the biggest factors on retention of any job, I mean, not just in education, is around the quality of leadership. What is one strategy that you can think of that would really help? I mean, you've been a school leader yourself. So what's one factor that you really think would help to improve leadership that also ties to retention?
Absolutely. Well, there are several, but one of the biggest strategies is something that school leader could put into play tomorrow, later today, really, is to humanize what it's like to be with your staff, right? When I say that, I'm saying be vulnerable, be transparent, make sure that you're communicating early and often, but more importantly, build those relationships. And so I know that, we're all well versed on that with students and teachers, of course, and students and leaders, but it's the same for your staff. When they know that you're genuinely invested in them and value them, as Cindy was saying, the research shows that, particularly that relationship or that dysfunctional, I'll just be strong with my words, relationship with leaders and teachers is actually one of the number one reasons why a teacher decides not to continue, or an aspiring teacher decides not to even continue to think about being a teacher, which is hard, right?
Yeah.
And I know that it's not personal. I'd like to believe that, right? I know that it's a matter of, when I was in the building myself, there are lots and lots and lots of things that school leaders have on their plates, whether you're building leader, district leader, superintendent. But we have to be intentional, looking at your 4 quadrants, right? There are always going to be emergencies, but you must learn to plan that intentionality with your staff. It might be, 5 staff a day that you make sure. I don't want to be, prescriptive, but, it's 5 staff a day that you're going to make sure that you are connecting with them, right? So that's
Yeah, I think that's huge. One of the things that I do that I really enjoy is I do one-on-one. So it's kind of like shifting that stay interview concept that is typically done with a principal and a teacher, which I still think is valuable. but I do confidential one-on-one interviews, focus group interviews, so that teachers can share a little bit more openly with someone that's not in HR. I am someone that works in HR, but I'm not in the school district HR. And so I'm able to get that information and kind of ask questions a little more deeply than I think a survey can do. One of the other strategies we're going to discuss is support as an effective means for retention. And it's one of the things I hear a lot from teachers. I need more support. And then my next question to them is always, tell me what you mean by support, because what Anne means and what Cindy means might be two different things. And so a survey might identify support, but it doesn't identify the solution. Well, you covered relationships as a strategy, and I think listening and acting upon what you hear from staff is key. I mean, I don't know about you, Anne, but I've gone through a lot of climate and culture surveys where we then wonder what happened to that result. Like, first of all, what did they hear? And what did they do? And so I think communication is really important. We have to be very transparent about telling staff, like, this is what we heard, and these are the things we can do something about. Because I think when staff knows that we're trying, that means a lot. Like, it's not just put on a shelf. We're going to do something. So let's go to kind of support. What types of support do you hear from staff? You know, what types of strategies around support do you think would be most effective?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm piggybacking right off of that, Cindy, where once you learn, whether it's a survey, whether it's a focus group, whether it's a one-on-one interaction, whether you meet them in the hallway and they tell you about something, once you learn what they need from you, then it needs to be customized. Like, I was in the building, I get it, right? It's great to do a one size
Yeah.
fits all type of appreciation or whatever it is. But whatever that person needs for support needs to be personalized, or it needs to be small group, just like, again, with reflecting how we do for students. So I'm thinking in particular around support, some of the areas that I've heard the most around the country have really been around, but surprisingly enough, professional learning. So, that one size fits all professional learning is not working for everybody. But, if I'm interested in working on blank or in my content, right?
Yeah.
And this actually leads to another area of support, is like creating what we call affinity spaces. So a lot of people do
Yeah.
affinity spaces related to race or gender, et cetera. But there is a lot of value in creating affinity spaces for content areas across district. So if you're in one building, building A, if it's a high school, right? And you have another high school, or you have two middle schools or something to that effect. Of course, elementary, you should have, having those content conversations, kind of a cohort where you can talk about the lessons. This is what really worked. This isn't what worked, but you can do it within your building as well. But I do encourage, for true retention, to do affinity spaces in different ways and different intersectionalities.
Yeah, and it might be a new teacher group that gets together and really helps to support one another. I remember that when I started as a new teacher, there was a group of us and we interacted. We were in a smaller community. And so it really mattered that we were able to connect with each other socially and not just professionally. We were all in very different content areas, but that was a really big deal when you are, especially for maybe, I mean, I think both large school districts and small, being able to find a cohort and get a small group to help support one another is huge, because it builds relationship, which is a human value. I mean, a human need, right? A sense of belonging, but also an organizational and school district need. So that's huge as well. I appreciate that comment. I think another area that I hear a lot of is around teacher autonomy and concerns that teachers have around autonomy, where they don't feel like they're treated as a professional. They don't feel like they're the expert in the classroom. And so what strategies have you either seen or heard of that can really help improve that? And full disclosure, I feel like when I first started teaching, I had a lot of autonomy, and it's sort of, the pendulum has swung. And so we've sort of gone to, I would say, a little bit more. I won't say a little. It's probably a lot more prescribed sort of approach to curriculum and pacing guides and so forth. And I do hear that as a concern from teachers. So what are some other things that you might suggest would be helpful?
Sure. I'm going to go back to my teacher leader hat from years ago, where I think that when you come with evidence, right? So I know we're speaking to leaders here, but I'm really thinking about the teachers and maybe you pouring into them how they can advocate for this. Autonomy means everything actually to a teacher. And if they have evidence that they, by being, by demonstrating this autonomy, that their students are growing, that's a conversation they should be able to have with a school leader and be comfortable in that. But, as a school leader, again, I get it. You have expectations that are actually above you.
Correct. Right. Makes us
District expectations. In my case, I'm at the Department of Ed, so there's Department of Ed expectations. But I think that that's where your role as a school leader is super important to advocate. Like I said, if you have the evidence, if you're seeing the growth, you're advocating to the next level up, who then needs to advocate to the next level up, or you're going all the way up to the Department of Ed. We are very responsive here in Delaware. I'm sure, in your state, your folks will be very responsive with evidence, with data that actually shows it. But I hear you. Teachers that for years, that pacing guide is a tool. It's supposed to guide. That's why it's not a mandated, or like, if you don't hit it on this day, it's a real concern.
Yeah. And I do understand the purpose of it. I mean, I know that, having students generally all doing the same, having the same curriculum concepts over time is really important. I think another thing that I could add, being really creative as a school leader and thinking, okay, these are the areas that I can't, that really none of us get to decide. I mean, there are school policies, there's state regulations, but being creative about here are the things where we can provide some decision making. And also, it kind of ties back to support. I think a lot of in my work in surveying teachers, it's really about 60% that feel like they have a supportive administrator. And I wonder how, I'm kind of thinking about how that support and autonomy are related, in that when a teacher comes with concerns, like you said, is the administrator listening? Are they thinking about how they can support their teacher in their sort of decision making? If it's an issue with a parent or a student concern, are they allowing them some decision making authority to the extent that they can? And I think that's really essential. There's lots of issues around that. I think we could talk for days, but we have, a half an hour. So to solve the world's problems. So the last one we're going to talk about today is appreciation. And I really like this one as in the top 5 of strategies that leadership can utilize, because it's something that I feel like most anyone can do something about. Some of the other ones, I mean, relationships too, I believe are the same, but appreciation is something that universally we know it increases engagement and productivity. And also, while it should be modeled from the top, we hope, I mean, that from leadership, it doesn't have to be. I can show appreciation to my coworkers and my colleagues, to my students, to my parents in different aspects. So I love the thought of the impact of appreciation on retention. I think there's a deeper level that goes to how do we show people they're valued. But just thinking about appreciation, what are some things that you used as a school leader that you felt were effective, or you heard that they were effective from your staff around appreciation?
Sure, absolutely. So again, going back to that humanizing, relationship building, even from University of Pennsylvania, research shows that, again, that should not be one size fits all appreciation. Some people, so what I found was from those conversations, not as detailed as yours, Cindy, I love your tools that you use, but having those conversations, I learned that there were certain staff that they look like their appreciation to be in that feedback.
Yeah.
Their written feedback, verbal feedback, the lesson, how they're handling classroom management, but also in other things that are not related specifically to the classroom. Of course, there are those that like not monetary, but things that are
Yeah,
tangible, foods and gift cards and all like that. But I think that the important thing is that to learn your staff, and it could be, and my biggest suggestion, here we go. I am not a big delegator, was not even at that time either, but there are other people that want to do that work that we're talking about. Because as a
mhm,
school leader, you can't
right. Can't do
find out
everything.
everything. Right, exactly. So either you have a committee of folks that's a retention committee, right? Or it's your sunshine committee, whatever it is, where they're finding out what the staff like. It can be quick and easy on their end. We've done Google surveys, we've done, other things. But the point is that once you know how your staff, really wants to receive that appreciation, then that's how it's done. And some people don't need appreciation every week, but once a year, of course, is not enough, right? So I know, of course, we always had Teacher Appreciation Week, but how can you embed appreciation throughout the year?
Exactly. And make it genuine. So I've led a lot of professional development for school leaders and supervisors
Sure.
about appreciation. So there's a great book called Workplace Appreciation, or the Five Languages of Workplace Appreciation, kind of like the five love languages.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
not 100%, in match. Most people don't want public appreciation. They don't want to be brought up on the stage or and talk, that's kind of uncomfortable for them. So I do think we need to be aware that it needs to be individualized, like you suggested. There might be a survey, and it doesn't have to be that we show appreciation in the same way to everyone. And I think really getting to know that is important. But the good news is, according to their research, not mine, but the good news is that tangible gifts, receiving gifts is not, number one. It's really about verbal appreciation. So you do have to make it personalized. And, just like we're in the classroom, we don't want to just say good job to our students because that is not specific enough. The same thing is true to teachers, really being able to, step in to the classroom and looking and seeing what's going on and saying, wow, I really saw how, when that student was struggling, you got at their side and you really came next to them and helped them through that. That's wonderful. Thank you for doing that. Just something like that. Yeah, not taping a mint to a piece of paper that says, good job, and stick it in the mailbox. Where I did have one of those ones.
That's
It's not
funny.
so much effective.
They're tasty though.
I mean, I loved the mint, but I didn't necessarily feel like I was genuinely appreciated. So I do think that's important. And I wonder if any of you that are here with us, if you have any questions, I'm going to post a couple things as we finish up to just share. I want to thank you, Anne, for number one, being my amazing colleague. But when you go to conferences, it's important to meet people and to really build those relationships. That's why I go. I mean, the information is great, but it's almost secondary to the relationship. So thank you for that. I'm going to share my screen here and we're going to talk about what's coming up next as we go here. So we've got a whole webinar series that you can join us for. They're all scheduled through October. And here's a pro tip. It's the same Zoom link every time just to make it easy, because I don't know about you, but I always lose the Zoom links and it's like panic. Where is it? What email did they send it to? So you can just keep that handy. And I do have a story form I want to share with you. So what I'm doing right now is working on a book project around teacher retention, where I'm gathering both teacher and administrator stories around why they've decided to stay in the classroom and teach, or why they may have left within the last 3 years. And I'm using that to kind of decide where I need to investigate in some of the research areas. I based this webinar today on some of the top 5 things that I hear from the most. My goal is to get responses from teachers from all 50 states, and I'm probably at maybe 25 states. So if you know anyone in Hawaii or Alaska that teaches or is an administrator, go visit them and share this link. And so if you could help spread that around, that would be excellent. And you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. Please check it out and engage with me so that the weird people that are also on mostly Facebook and YouTube don't take over, because that can be somewhat troubling. I like to speak to people who actually have a vested interest in education. So if you have any strategies that you think have been effective in your work in teacher retention, I'd love to hear them. I mean, I don't know if you can unmute where you are, but it would be helpful to hear that as well. It is a big challenge. We know it's complex. And I think if there's not, any last comments there, I think the other reason that it makes it complicated to address is that all the issues could be different district by district, but also building by building. And that makes it challenging from a district-wide approach. And I think that's why not only do teachers need someone to talk to and really hear and listen to them, I think school leaders do, and people in HR. Also, people like me, we need people to talk to about some of the problems and challenges so that we can learn from one another. So that's what these teacher retention series is about. And if you have an idea that you would like to share, something that you found to be effective, reach out to me, because I would love to highlight the skills and expertise that you have. I certainly hear, I hear my perspective from various teachers and leaders I work with, but I would love to learn more about other challenges that go on across the country. So feel free to reach out. And thank you so much. I hope you all have a good rest of your week.